Welcome back again to Channel 18. Our third guest is Stefan Wallenberger. He is the Power Supply Coordinator at Cape Light Compact. And that's important because if you're like me, you've been getting a number of calls lately wanting to save you from 6 to 9 cents on your gasoline or bill, and yet Cape Light Compact hasn't called. So we wanted to find out maybe if there's a good reason. I'm sure there is, and Stefan, you can tell us about that part.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me back again, Paul.
You're welcome.
So just to kind of step back and put everything in context, just to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. We're talking about electricity, and specifically on your electric bill, there are kind of two portions. One is for delivery or distribution. So that's basically what you pay to get electricity from where it's produced to your home. And so that always goes to Eversource. They used to call themselves NSTAR. Now it's Eversource. Just because they own all of the poles and the wires and the trucks and the meters and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
The second part is what we're talking about, and that's for generation or power supply. And so that's what we pay to actually produce the electricity that ultimately gets delivered to us and then we use for lights and what have you. And so that's the part that has gone up a lot, over the past couple of years, but especially starting this winter. That price has gone way, way up.
This past winter?
Yeah, so starting in basically the beginning of the year, that price went way, way up.
I didn't notice it in my gas bill, but how much did that go up?
So it's actually...
About how much?
Well, it went up on the electric bill.
Yes.
Which is kind of, there's a funky reason why you saw it on your electric bill and not your gas bill, which we can talk about. But basically, yeah, you're really only seeing it in that power supply portion of your bill, the big increase. And last time I was here, we talked a little bit about why that was.
Yes.
And it basically has to do with natural gas.
Right.
Essentially, we use a huge amount of natural gas to produce electricity and to heat our homes in New England. And so we've been dramatically increasing the amount of natural gas that we're using, but we really only have the same couple of pipelines that bring natural gas from other parts of the country where we're extracting it up into New England. And that essentially hasn't changed in decades, even while we've been increasing how much we're using. And so we basically, we kind of hit a wall the past couple of winters where we've found ourselves, New England as a whole, in periods when we were basically burning natural gas as quickly as we could bring it up through these pipelines. And so that's the issue. And so prices kind of creeped up over the past couple of winters, but they really jumped up this winter because there was a lot of concern in the market that we were going to have this problem again. It was going to be a really cold winter, and gas and electricity prices would go way, way up, which is why prices went up.
Well, we did have a bad winter, I think.
Well, it started out pretty mild. It always sounds funny to say that winter didn't feel so bad when we got, 8, 10 feet of snow or whatever it was, right? But
we got a lot.
We got a lot. We got a lot. But looking at just heating degree days themselves, which we use as a measure of how cold it was,
true. Yes.
It started out pretty mild, but February and March definitely were very cold, very, very cold. And that's, that's essentially the issue.
Now, I know there's been meetings that have been going on.
Right.
Now, and there was one recently in Connecticut, I believe.
That's right.
Did anything come out of that?
So basically the governors are trying to collectively kind of figure out what to do about this. The challenge that we have is that the owners of these pipelines or the potential developers of new pipelines, they want a long-term contract. They want someone to say, we will pay you for the use of your pipeline for the next decade or two. But what we really need the gas for is electricity production. And natural gas generators, the ones that are using the natural gas and the pipelines to get it here to produce electricity, they look at a very short timeline. So they don't really know how much money they're going to be getting for electricity later today or tomorrow, let alone 5 or 10 years from now. So they don't want to sign these long-term contracts. And so essentially, that's what we're left with. We're left with the developers that want this long-term contract, and on the other hand, the generators that don't want that. So the governors are trying to come together to figure out how to overcome that issue. And basically, kind of the idea on the table would be to effectively charge everyone in New England, or maybe only certain states, but at least most of the people in New England, charge them a little bit on their electric bill to essentially provide a backstop for a contract for these natural gas pipelines,
Right.
so that those developers would get the certainty that they say they need before they're willing to build a pipeline to bring in more natural gas. But it's not something that New England has done before. We've never had to coordinate this kind of charge between all of the states. We've never paid for natural gas infrastructure directly on our electric bill. So there are a lot of things that make it complicated, which is why the governors are moving so slowly. Another thing that makes it really complicated is that the benefits would be socialized over all of the states. So let's just say Massachusetts decides that it was going to pick up the bill to bring the natural gas pipeline in. There's almost no way to make it so that all of the savings that come from that would go just to Massachusetts ratepayers.
Okay.
Basically, because our electric market is organized as a region, as the New England region, all of those savings, pretty much by definition, would go to the entire region. So that's another challenge, right? How do you get all of the states to contribute since all of them stand to benefit? So it's a complicated issue. It really is, unfortunately.
How should it be solved?
Well, ideally, all of the states would contribute, right?
Right.
Because again, all of the savings will go back to the states. The exact specifics of how it's done are something that the compact is still looking at, and there's in fact a docket, they call it, at the Department of Public Utilities that just opened up in the last couple of days, which is going to address some of these questions. So who would own the pipeline, who would finance it, who would pay for it, who would benefit from it, all those kinds of things. The kind of idea on the table right now is to basically have the companies that we get electricity from sign the long-term contracts for the natural gas.
All right.
And there are some reasons why that's a good idea, but there are also some things that we're a little concerned about with that, you know? Anytime you ask them to do something like that, they're gonna wanna make a pretty good chunk of money doing it, and there are just some questions that I think have to be resolved. But hopefully those will all get hashed out in this proceeding of the DPU now.
So why haven't I got a call from Cape Life Compact to tell me how much money they're going to save me on my bill?
Sure. So to describe what the compact does really quickly, so as you know, we do energy efficiency, we do advocacy, but we also do power supply. So if you were to move to the Cape by default, Eversource would be your distribution company, and the Cape Light Compact would be picking your power supply company. Basically, that second half of the bill we were talking about. And generally, the way that we set our price is we change it every 6 months. So right now, our price is very high, above 15 cents for power supply. And the reason for that has to do with what we were just talking about, natural gas. The important thing to understand, though, is that it's not really an issue that we have with natural gas that's year-round. It's really just in the winter, because during the winter, we're using natural gas for heating and electricity production. We use more electricity in the summer, but during the summer, we're not bringing in natural gas for heating as well. So we have enough capacity for natural gas in the summer.
All right.
And what that means is that wintertime prices can be 4 times higher than other months in the year. So our price is really high right now because it included all of those really expensive winter months, January, February, and March. Our price will be resetting it in July, and it's going to come down a lot from where it is now. So that's important for people to understand. It's high right now. It's going to come down a lot in July, just because that will be for the second half of the year, which doesn't include those really expensive winter months.
Well, why are some people calling us now and telling us they'll save us whatever?
Sure. There are kind of 2 things that you need to think about, or kind of offers that suppliers might make. So one thing that suppliers will do is they will offer you an introductory rate, right? So it lasts for 3 months or maybe 6 months or something like that, and it seems very low. But the problem is, once you get to the end of that introductory offer, a lot of the time the price will bump up. It will go to a variable rate. This is something that we saw last winter. We had customers who saw their price triple.
Wow.
Because they got to the end of that introductory rate. It's a lot like when you see introductory rates from credit card companies, it's a lot like that. So you get a really good deal initially, but the question is, what happens after that initial deal expires? So that's one thing to look out for. And then another thing that you'll see is companies that are offering a price that is for a year or 2 years or more. And the reason that that is lower than our price right now is because they are averaging the entire year. So our price is high right now, but it's going to come down in July. So if you were looking at an offer from a company that was offering something that would last for an entire year, it would be attractive relative to our price now, but probably actually higher than our price starting in July. They're basically just averaging it out over a longer period of time. So it might seem like you're saving a lot of money right now, but starting in July, it may no longer seem like such a good deal. So those are kind of the two ways that suppliers will structure their offers to make the savings seem larger than they actually are.
So you don't want to get into that billing until July.
Well, we have to set a price, and then we have to honor that price.
Yes, right.
And so generally the way that we do it is we change it every 6 months.
Okay.
So right, we'll change
from July until January.
July, exactly. So kind of first half of the year, second half.
Do we know what your price would be in January?
We don't, but it probably will go up again from where it will be from July through December, basically, because again of those natural gas issues. I don't think that it's going to go as high as it is right now, but it will be higher than it will be from July through December, just because, again, it includes those really expensive winter months.
Right. Now, you can't compete with these other customers who are willing to start you next month with a reduction.
But the problem, Paul, is that they may offer you a saving up front.
Okay. All right, I get
but the saving may not persist. So it may look like a good deal right now, but it may not be a good deal 3 months from now. And that's the challenge, and that's why all of this is really complicated. So what we tell people is that if they want to sign up for one of those offers, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, they really want to make sure they're asking some of the questions that we talked about. Is this an introductory rate? What happens at the end of the introductory rate? Does my price go up? Do they sign me up for another year? What happens at the end? Another question is, if it's fixed for a year, maybe that price looks good now, but it's probably higher than your price would have been if you'd stayed with the compact starting in July. And then other things, a lot of suppliers have, well, not a lot, but there are some suppliers that have a monthly fee. So in addition to what you pay per kilowatt hour, you pay another $5 or $10 or whatever it is per month just to be a customer. Other suppliers will have termination fees, and some will have language in their contract that says if there are changes in rules or laws, or even sometimes we've seen language that says if it no longer becomes financially advantageous for the supplier to honor the offer they made to you, they can change the price. So these are all things that people need to look for. So if people are considering signing up for another power supplier, we just want to make sure that they're asking the right questions, they're doing their homework, they're asking to see a copy of the contract before they sign up for anything. If you give your account number out over the phone, then the supplier has everything they need to sign you up. So we always tell people, don't give your account number out over the phone.
That's what I have not been doing.
Excellent. And you've already done the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, you don't know what you're signing up for. Someone might tell you something over the phone, but you can't be getting all of the details because important things are in that contract.
Right.
So you should ask to see that contract. And ultimately, if people are willing to ask those questions, do their homework, get the contract, then we always say that the Compact's power supply offer is one option, and people are always welcome to explore those other options. We just want to make sure that people know exactly what they're signing up for. So if people are in that process and have questions, they can call the Cape Light Compact. We have a lot of great information on our website, www.capelightcompact.org. I think that they're going to run the the website and the number at the bottom of
Yes,
the screen.
that's right.
Um,
Now, are you losing customers? Do you know?
yeah, we're definitely losing some customers. We are. And that is for a couple of reasons. It's because, well, just generally, you're going to have people that will transition to other suppliers.
Right.
That's the way these things happen, and we're fine with that. We also have seen times when we got a bunch of customers back because, for instance, they got to the end of an introductory offer
Okay, and then the price went up.
and they didn't like it so much anymore. And that's another thing that I didn't say before that's important to note. There's no fee for leaving the Cape Light Compact, and you can come back, but if a customer leaves the Cape Light Compact, goes to another supplier, and wants to come back, we may not be able to give them the same price that we're offering to customers that never left.
I see.
And that's not because we want to penalize anyone or anything like that. It's just because when we set our price, it's based on an expectation of a certain number of customers and that sort of thing. And so if we have a lot of customers that leave and then all try to come back at the same time during expensive months, we may not be able to offer them the same price because we just didn't plan for it, So that's something for people to be aware of. They can leave and they can come back, but they may not be able to get the same price that everybody else is getting.
Well, I know we've been told that we have so much time, and I think you probably have taken us through this very good, and I appreciate that. And at least from my point of view, I think I'm going to wait until find out what your price is in July, and probably stay with you. But I wonder, how many other people are going to do that, and that's one of the questions that you've already answered. And it's an important question, I think. So we thank you for explaining the ramifications of taking an early price, which may be lower than what your bill says now, but it may not be when the winter comes,
Or in July.
whenever July comes, right?
Right.
So those are good answers, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And then I always have to say, the most important thing that people can do, the best way to control their bills, is to take advantage of our energy efficiency programs, which we've talked about before. But ultimately, what happens for electricity prices in New England pretty much is going to affect everyone the same way. Most of this energy is bought and sold through one central market, right? So there may be opportunities for small savings here and there, but you're probably not going to do way better one way or another. The best thing that you can do is reduce the amount of electricity you're consuming. So people should definitely take advantage of our energy efficiency programs. Most important thing they can.
And that's to put in energy efficient lighting?
It's, so we'll come and we do an audit at no cost. And I should say these are programs that everybody pays for on their electric bill already.
Yeah.
So it's in everyone's interest to take advantage of the programs they're paying for already. But yeah, it includes a no-cost energy assessment.
Right.
And that's available to people that own their homes and to people that rent their homes.
Now, do you still give those circular bulbs?
So we do a combination. I think you're talking about what we call compact fluorescents, or CFLs.
Okay.
They're the kind of squiggly ones.
Yes.
We still do some of those, but we also now do LEDs. I don't have my phone in front of me, but LEDs are great because they are even more efficient than CFLs. They have no mercury in them, even though CFLs have a tiny, tiny amount of mercury in them. And some people don't like that some CFLs take a second to kind of warm up. You turn them up and then they don't get bright right away. LEDs are instant on.
Yeah.
And almost all LEDs are dimmable too. So it's kind of the next technology in lighting, and they're really great.
Right.
So it's definitely pretty exciting that we're able to start giving those out.
Okay. So that's one advantage that people can save on.
Absolutely.
And they just have to call, and you will come and assess.
Right.
Give them an energy audit.
Yeah, so in addition to things that they'll do while they're at your house, like take a look at your lighting and replace inefficient light bulbs, and look at aerators, that sort of thing, they'll also look at basically anything that uses electricity or energy in your home. So they're going to look at your refrigerator, they're going to look at your insulation, they're going to look for air sealing, and then at the end, they're going to make recommendations about things that you can do. and they're going to tell you about incentives that are available to help pay for those things. So for instance, we will pay for 100% of the cost of air sealing, of cost-effective air sealing, which is great because not only does that reduce the amount of energy you're consuming, it also makes your home a lot more comfortable, especially during the winter, which is really, really nice. So, you know, if you have been in a house where you see someone, you know, curled up with a blanket because they can basically see the windows rattling or the air coming in under the door, definitely want to call and get an energy audit.
Well, that's a good thought. And I've already had one. I don't know if I can have another one.
You can. You are able to get one once every 12 months.
Oh,
And our
wow.
programs do change over time. So if it's been, you know, a couple of years, it might be worth having another.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you once again for enlightening us about energy prices and how we can save on them. And thank you for coming.
And thanks for having me again, Paul.
You're welcome.